All right, here we go. The deeper dive. Happy Halloween. Dave Lochran, aka Rufus Stone, here with my partner, Ship My Modem, Adam Shar. Happy Halloween, bro. I know this is your favorite holiday.
Yeah, man, I get really into it every year, as you can tell. But yeah, it's a fun holiday. I love it.
Yeah, no,
I
you're
love
the
it in
worst.
college. Easily my favorite holiday in college.
Yeah, you're the worst with this. Last year, when it was a three-man show and we were, doing it with Manny Laura, and you just decided, screw these guys. I'm gonna go on looking like myself.
Yeah, yeah. I made it. I mean, I did a show shirtless later in the year. I feel like I made up for it.
That is true. That is true. The bet was naked, actually, but no one was asking you to turn the camera down anyway, so we all took your word for it. Um, anyway, here's what I'm looking forward to. This is what I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping we have some first time viewers today, right? That are entirely unaware that this is me.
it if you looked like if I saw you like that, I would not think twice about it like being you. It fits enough that
Oh, thanks.
I don't think that's coming across as a compliment at all. But
No, it's not. Certainly not. All right. Well, I could only wear it for so long before the itchiness takes control. But we got 7 games. You've got a lot of like clearly notable injuries, whether it be Jimmy Butler, Jeff Teague, Alfred Payton, Devin Booker, Isaiah Cannon. There's already people in chat saying fade Okubo. This is where it's going to be today, and we are pretty much we're pretty much dealing with a whole lot of injuries. And by the way, Deckman says, I love how you guys coordinate your hat direction. It's because if I wore this is a mullet hat. If I wore this backwards, I wouldn't be able to see. But anyway, let's talk. Yeah, the hands. Yes, that wasn't actually the goal, but it is definitely the Hanson look. Let's talk about Detroit. Actually, do you want to mention anything just on value, on injuries, anything you think's worth pointing out before we start?
I mean, I guess as like a slate overview, obviously you're going to get very concentrated ownership on certain value plays, and I do think that there are different spots if you're max entering that you can go to here and not completely fade the chalk guys, but I don't necessarily think that especially the Minnesota guys. I like them quite a bit. I'm going to play them obviously, but they are chalk mediocre players facing the Jazz. So I guess the point is just like don't be afraid to get kind of creative, especially in large field tournaments with the value that's out there.
Yep, 100%, Scott Joe Dirt. I'm with you there. Let's get it started. Brooklyn and Detroit. Brooklyn, what? This is when things get interesting. And you have a Brooklyn team that's favored in 2018. They're 3-point favorites at home. Not as sexy as you generally see. 216 total. You're already beginning to see totals drop a little bit. I've seen like not your Golden State, New Orleans game, not your Lakers game, but some of them are starting to come back down to earth a little bit. 216.5, Adam. Why don't we just go ahead and start with the Detroit side and what you plan on doing with this front court?
Yeah, so I mean, the Detroit side, obviously, you're starting with Drummond and Griffin, like you said. Great spot for both of them, especially Drummond. I mean, just should be able to get so many rebounds against an inefficient Brooklyn team that doesn't rebound particularly well. I like him a lot. The issue that Josh and I talked about this morning is just that center's really deep, and paying up for Drummond, like I'm still getting a lot of him in my initial crunches, so I do assume that I'll end up with a good amount of him. But there is, plenty of opportunity cost at the position to pay up just because it's so deep. Griffin, I really want to see a Brooklyn lineup. I'm projecting Hollis Jefferson to jump into the starting lineup to defend him, which not that it makes a huge difference, but it would be a downgrade over Jared Dudley. But still, obviously, waiting for that. It is a nice spot for Griffin. I like it a little bit better for Drummond though, just because he plays closer to the basket. He's a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Griffin I believe is cheaper than he is on DraftKings, which makes him a great play over there.
Yeah, agree, man. I can't wait to get to this Phoenix game. Everyone with these wild takes so far in chat. This should be fun. I'm kind of the thing for me at center, and I think you mentioned it. I was reading chat, but center's very deep. and I love some of these mid-range centers. I don't know where you're targeting, but I really like some of these 7K centers if you're talking like
As do I.
DraftKings.
Yep.
DeAndre Ayton, both DeAndres
Yep.
are
Same thing.
right. I mean, really, really good spots. And like that's not. We're gonna break down we're definitely gonna break down the center position in Moses. If you're not in Slack, by the way, if you're a subscriber to Osimo and you're not in the Slack chat yet, definitely recommend you hop over there. Channels for everything. Yeah, look, Drummond's a fine play. I have no problem with him. The only player averaging more rebounds than DeAndre Jordan this year is Andre Drummond, so I totally understand it. But you're looking at a back-to-back here. And another thing, too, is I think you may not see this as much as I do, not to say one of us is right or wrong, but I've been very impressed with Jarrett Allen's defense this year. And I'm not saying that it continues. I'm not saying that he's going to wind up being a stud defender. He's 6'10" without the hair. I think probably 7'2" with it. But this is a guy whose defensive impact, and I'm not just talking about like a D rating. Maybe it's not him. Maybe it's just the front court in general. But they've done a good job of protecting the rim last year after being so terrible at doing so last year and the year before.
I mean, he's got like a 7'6" or a 7'7" wingspan. He should be a good defender.
Right. Yeah, and I guess it's a little. I'd say it's a little too early. It's a little too early for me to make any judgments. But who it is. Chris DeMarco says people need to realize that Okubo and Tyus are good value plays, yes, but they both have bad matchups, and the chalk could burn you bad. Chalk can always burn you bad, but Okubo does not have a bad matchup.
One of them has a bad matchup.
One of them definitely has a bad matchup. The other, San Antonio, is not. They lost 2 or 3 of their best. Again, we'll get. I got to stop cutting out of order here, Adam. There's just a lot popping in chat. Before we move over to the Brooklyn side, is there anything on this Detroit team? Not just I like them. I could see them having a good game, like a Blake or like a Drummond, but are expensive. Is there anyone that you really like from Detroit?
Drummond would be the one that I really like. I mean, I do have him projected as one of the highest scorers on the slate. The only problem, obviously, is the position, but I do really, really like him. Other than that, it's secondary guys for me, from Reggie Jackson to Ish Smith to if you're playing a bunch of lineups and wanted to get to like a Stanley Johnson or a Bullock, but nothing that I'm prioritizing other than Drummond.
All right, Steve. He said I'm butchering his name. Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? He's French. Brooklyn side of the ball. D'Angelo Russell. He's come down in price quite a bit, and he's probably he played 34 minutes once this year in a real close game. But whenever I'm actually projecting his minutes, I'm projecting him for like 27 to maybe 30. Once you start projecting him more than that, it's just wishful thinking. I do think at this price though he's a decent play. But then let's get into it once again, as we talked about with center. So much of the value is at point guard.
Right. I think it's going to be easier on DraftKings. He does have the shooting guard eligibility as well. The Brooklyn team in general, this is the starting lineup that I'm most interested in seeing tonight, just because I think that Hollis Jefferson could be in it, and it changes a lot. We did see him ramp up to 27 minutes last game, and then this is obviously a spot where they could use his defense against the starter, not against Glenn Robinson or whoever's going to play the backup for. So I think that matters. He's obviously a higher usage guy than Dudley, but because I'm not really sure how this rotation is going to go for tournaments, I kind of projected all of these guys to a minute ceiling where I don't think necessarily that they all play as many minutes as I have them at, but I'm comfortable kind of trying to project ceilings from these guys and then cap exposure to them, because I think that on DraftKings in particular, they are all kind of underpriced. You mentioned Russell at only 5,900. I have him projected for 31 or 32 minutes. I think that he's, a solid play there. Hollis Jefferson, if he gets up over 30 minutes at only 5,200, becomes one of my favorite tournament plays because he's not going to have much ownership, I don't think. Karis LeVert at 6K is the guy that I expect to play the most minutes. In that last game, he lost 4 or 5 minutes at the end to, I believe it was a blowout, but he had already played like 30 minutes. I haven't projected to play 34. And then also because of Detroit closing so frequently with Reggie Jackson and Ish Smith, I'm expecting a closing lineup here of Russell, Dinwiddie, either Harris or Crabbe, Hollis Jefferson, and Allen. So I even gave Dinwiddie a few extra minutes here. Point being that these guys are all cheap, and I think some combination of them is going to do really well tonight. It's just a matter of having confidence in getting the right one.
Crabbe's got some big ears, man.
Yeah.
Do you? So there's a conversation now that's actually relevant to the conversation. A few people, our boy Seth, saying Allen Crabbe is the pivot. So basically, Allen Crabbe is the pivot off these value two guards. Yes or no?
I like the price tag. The issue for me is that I can't get Crabbe projected for more than like 23 or 24 minutes. And I think that the other guys are going to play like 10 minutes more than him. So it still becomes really difficult. But yeah, I mean, and you need a good shooting game from Crabbe. Like the other guys, I think are just going to have the ball in their hands so much, and they're going to play more minutes that it still gets really tough for me to make that pivot.
All right. Let's go on. I liked Russell earlier in the day. Once all that news started breaking, it became a little bit tough. And then when with LeVert, Karis LeVert's just one of these guys that, you know, not to be wishy-washy, but he's the only player on this team that's averaging more than 30 minutes a game. So,
yeah.
You know, he has upside. And outside of that, he's had, I think, he's had two pretty rough games. Outside of that, he's been sitting in the 35-40 range. So I don't have an issue with him here. But I think the thing with Russell is you're getting Reggie Jackson and Ish Smith defense, which really isn't scary at all.
And for whatever it's worth, in my initial crunch, I just went back and looked. I barely ended up with any Russell. I ended up with a ton of Hollis Jefferson and LeVert. Like I said, I kind of intentionally overprojected Hollis Jefferson for tournaments, but that does go to your point about with the value opening up at guard, it becomes easier. It becomes harder to get Russell. It becomes easier to get LeVert.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't know Joe Dirt was doing the podcast today. Now you do. Denver and Chicago. Let's talk about this one here. In Chicago, Denver favored by 8 points, 221.5 total. Not a surprise. A little lower than I thought, but again, I think we're starting to see. A little bit of come back down to earth, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, we do see the pace normally slow down after the first couple of weeks. Like it's going to be faster than last year, but probably not as much as it was, for the first 10 days or whatever.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking too is when does the pace hit a wall? Like, you can only increase pace so much.
Right. Yeah. Before you're just, chucking shots that you shouldn't be taking. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I haven't thought about it. Does the 14-second offensive rebound clock factor into that?
It should.
It should, right? Like, I don't know how it's measured. I know how pace is measured, but I don't know. So it should factor into it because it's just possessions, the amount of possessions. Yeah.
Yeah, that should factor in, as should, teams looking to shoot more threes and looking to shoot earlier in the shot clock.
Exactly. So we'll see how that ends up working out. By the way, stick around after the show. Live Before Lock with Eddie and Chris is coming up after us.
There you go.
I got the schedule pulled up today, baby. You fix mistakes, Josh, and then you move on in life. Denver and Chicago. Yeah, all I heard was Jabari Parker moving into the starting lineup. Great, awesome. That's great. Like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but I liked it when he was playing 60% or 50% of his minutes without Zach LaVine, or at least 40% of his minutes without LaVine. Now you're not really going to have that. And the only reason I mention that is because Zach LaVine has the second highest usage rate in the entire league. Granted, he's not averaging as many shots as a few other guys, but because this team plays at a slower pace than a lot of others, they have less possessions per game, and he's eating more of those possessions up. But more minute, I think Jabari Parker, the good thing about him starting is that in a I won't even say a blowout, that he should see more minutes. But if you look at his last 4 games, and you look, we'll say since Portis was out and Dunn went back out, he's getting like 26 minutes in blowouts and then 30-plus in competitive games. Even one when Portis was healthy, you got the 31. But I think coming into the starting lineup does complicate things a bit, Adam, because now you're contending. My guess would be instead of 60, 65% of your minutes, 75, 80, no, probably like 85% of his minutes are going to be with Zach LaVine on the court.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to do any favors for his usage, but I still think he's, a really good play here. In the time that they've played alongside each other this year, Parker has about a 22.5% usage rate. His assist percentage is up around 14%. And LaVine, meanwhile, is at 36% usage, 12% assists. So we have at least seen Parker, involved in other areas, not just scoring. And the price tag's still just so cheap at only 6K on DraftKings with multi-position eligibility that even though I do expect his usage to come down a bit from where it was when he was coming off the bench, I still think he, comes in as a good play.
Agreed. Photo camera. Is that Jay from Jay and Silent Bob? Even sounds like him. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we're going to have people tuning into this show for the first time. Just be like, yep, never tune it in again. There's no way he knows what he's done. I don't think Josh wanted me to go on to live stream because of that, because he was worried that people would just immediately tune out. But for those of you that know me, I know a little bit about basketball, more than the hair would indicate. LaVine, honestly, Adam, with Zach LaVine, you've had one game below 35 fantasy points. And I'm not just using fantasy production as a gauge, but 40 plus in all but two. And the reason I mention this is pretty obvious because his usage is through the roof. He's got a ton of opportunity every single day. So he may not be the best when it comes to dishing out assists or picking up rebounds. But when you're out there for 35 minutes, when you're chucking 18 to 22 shots a game, when a good 33 to 40% of your field goal attempts are three-pointers, you're going to put up big numbers. And do I think his 52% shooting will come down a little bit? Yeah. But I also think that you're just getting so much out of Zach LaVine that I'm surprised, frankly, that he's still $7,400 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. It feels kind of scary, like going to him because you're waiting for the other like shoe to drop, and
his team gets blown out so often too, right, really bad.
Yeah, and it's a tough Denver defense and all that, but he's just so cheap. Like if he was like Oladipo's price at 8,600, then sure, but it's just still a complete mispricing for a guy that is the entire offense, and is going to, even if they do get blown out, he's going to play three quarters, and he's basically priced for three quarters.
Exactly. I mean, you're talking about a guy that even in blowouts is still getting the run. And right, even in the blowouts where he only plays 27 minutes, it's probably still giving you 30, 35, which is kind of nice, for 7,400. That, I like that. And Zach LaVine's just going to continue to be in play for as long as his price tag doesn't mirror his production. It's really that simple, and you don't even need to go much further than that. Anything else for you with Chicago?
I think that. So we talked about Payne this morning. I've come down on him, obviously, with all the point guard value opening, but all the ownership obviously is going to go there. Cameron Payne's going to have none because he's coming off two bad games. It's obviously not someone I would look to in cash for more than 2 seconds, but in tournaments, he's still, if he plays well, he can still play 30, 32 minutes at $4,600 and no ownership. I think that that's a kind of interesting spot. And the same thing kind of goes for Wendell Carter because he's 4,900 coming off of games where he's lost minutes and blowouts or just due to poor performance. But there's no way you can tell me that the game plan going in is for Felicio to play more minutes than Wendell Carter, even if Carter's playing well. So both of them in tournaments make some sense, and I don't think you would have to have a ton of exposure to be overweight.
Yeah. I just don't think I'm going there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I'll end up with. I'm just like, if they're going to be 2% owned, then you can get to like, double or triple the field. Like that should be enough.
Yeah. Are you talking about your Wendell Carter?
Or Payne, either one.
Or Payne, yeah. My problem with Carter is that DraftKings did it again and took away power forward. Like, power forward's not very good. Center is stacked to the brim, and it makes it tough. But, yeah, if you're talking about playing a multitude of lineups and getting a little bit in there, that's different. But then how many minutes can I project him for is another thing. 27 in the blowout, and 30. Then 20 – say that again?
30 to 32 for both of them. If the game stays close and they're both playing well, that's where I think they get to. Like that's what they're pretty consistently on pace for in first halves where there isn't foul trouble or.
So what about the Atlanta game for Carter?
I don't remember what happened in that game.
He played 22 minutes. He had one foul, and he had a double-double.
I think didn't Felicio play like really well off the bench? Like the whole second unit played well.
I thought, yeah. I mean, yes, but he doubled like he Carter played really well too. Look, I'm not even arguing the point. I'm just saying that I had a little bit less confidence in his minutes, in Carter's minutes, not Cameron Payne's minutes. But I had a little less confidence in Carter's minutes.
I don't think it's even confidence though. It's that clearly he can play that many minutes. Like,
oh, I'm not. Oh, yeah, he could definitely play. I'm just not personally projecting him for that. That's what I should say.
yeah, no, I mean, if I'm projecting ceiling, I have him at I think 30. I think I have Carter at 28 or 30 and Payne at like 30 to 32.
Oh, then I totally agree with that in terms of ceiling. Yeah, I just feel like there's more volatility than I feel comfortable with. By the way, Wendell Carter's a pretty decent defender. I mean, he came into the league as somebody that could defend. I don't think he's going to have the easiest time defending a guy like Jokic, though, who just does so much in so many different ways. I mean, when you lead your team in so many passing stats and touches and numbers that should be dominated by guards, that says you're pretty good. And we know when it comes to Nikola Jokic, this is a guy who could have an awful game shooting, score 12 points, and still give you 45 fantasy points. Is that what you want? No, you don't want that. But Jokic's floor is, I feel like, honestly, most of this season we've been seeing Jokic floor games. He popped an 80 banger in there earlier against Phoenix, but I feel like we've just gotten a lot of Jokic floor games. Let me return to the original question, which is why I'm not as high on him as I would be. I love the mid-range at center.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Drummond, not even a mid-range guy, but Drummond is $700 less on DraftKings.
Yeah.
And then you have, all the other guys that we talked about. So yeah, I love Jokic, but this actually gets to a point that I made this morning and that I think is worth mentioning if you're playing large field tournaments, especially on DraftKings. If you're like myself and you're probably not going to find yourself getting to much Jokic, even though it is a really good spot, the really easy way to kind of maximize your upside for the night, if you're already kind of taking that stand where you don't have Jokic, is to play some Plumlee at power forward because he's really cheap. He's going to play 15, 16 minutes most of the time and probably give you like 15, 16 points. But when Jokic gets in any sort of foul trouble, if the game blows out at all, if anything weird happens, Plumlee is getting those center minutes and he's a point per minute plus guy in the spot. So it's a really easy spot where you can kind of just maximize your upside by playing a little bit of him mixed in with not having much Jokic if that's the route that you go.
All right. You know what? Oh, give me 1 second here. You remember when we hopped on before we started the live stream and it lost me here. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right. Lost my camera. Let me try and get me back up here. When that's on me, Josh. That's on me. Don't worry about it. I had to make an adjustment. I had unplugged the microphone. And if you remember, I was like, man, I'm surprised you could hear me. I was 10 feet away. That's because it was my computer microphone. So yeah, that's not cool. But anyway, let's keep talking. I'll get this going here. Oh, here's let's swap to the next. Unless you want to keep, let's keep moving with Denver for a minute. We talk about Jokic. You still have guys like Murray at a deep position. You have a pretty deep Denver team. Paul Millsap's cheap, but he's just like, he used to play an integral role. This dude used to be really good, and now he's just a guy that gets some minutes. What do you make of Denver?
They're kind of more expensive than I would like on DraftKings in general. I like Jamal Murray's spot a lot. I like Gary Harris's spot a ton. But they're both, right around $7,000, and it makes it tough to prioritize them. Paul Millsap, like you said, it's a phenomenal spot. It gets even better with Jabari Parker starting. I have no issue going to Millsap, but you also have to keep in mind that it's kind of tough to project him for a really high ceiling because his direct backup is Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles is playing no other position other than power forward this year. Trey Lyles is good. And Trey Lyles, it's just tough to be like, oh, yeah, he's probably only going to play 14 minutes tonight because we're pretty consistently seeing him get, at least 20 to 22 minutes. And since they're sharing 48, that kind of just caps Millsap. The price tag is really appealing, though. So I still think that he's a reasonably good spot to go to. It just price-wise gets difficult with Denver starters. And that's another reason why I actually do have some interest in kind of just trying to take the, hope something goes weird here and I get, a bunch of minutes from like Monte Morris or Mason Plumlee or something.
Yeah, me too. And again, we're going to get to these games where there's just so many other great spots. But if anything, I think Murray would be a pretty the camera outstunt's not a costume change. Uh, I don't know. Denver's fine to me. Jokic is fine to me, but I feel like we still haven't gotten to those games where we get like into the thick of those great guards and centers yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's guys that are in good spots, and I'm not going to tell anyone not to play them. I'm just saying that I doubt that I really get to a ton of them because of where they're priced at.
All right, let's move on. Utah and Minnesota. Here we go. This is what people have been waiting to talk about. You know, this season, Derrick Rose has played 55 minutes without Butler and Teague, and he has pretty incredible, actually. A 35.2% usage rate, 36% assist rate, almost half fantasy points per minute, and they actually get better with Wiggins out. Now, I was kind of surprised to see Utah favored by only 5.5. I feel like this is a spot where if this game stays close, normally I'd be like, well, Rose can't handle the minutes. But Rose has played 30 minutes, 32 minutes, 31, 29, 27. His usage is monstrous when these guys aren't on the court. We're going to get into Tyus Jones. Don't worry, Koji. We'll get into all of these guys. But I want to start with Derrick Rose because he's $4,900 on DraftKings. He's $5,500 on FanDuel. And Thibodeau has clearly placed some faith in him this year, or he just thinks that he's his best offering off the bench. I just read you those numbers. It's not a big sample, but it's been pretty consistent that whenever he's playing without those guys there, Derrick Rose is the one, running the offense in the half court, bringing the ball up the court, and getting a lot of opportunities as a scorer and facilitator.
Yeah, and you should see him having more opportunities from a playmaking perspective as well, because I would expect him to get backup point guard minutes here. Like Tyus Jones has been the backup to Teague, and then Rose, backs up at the 2 basically. But now I'm expecting Jones will start, and you'll have Rose playing some minutes with like the second unit as a point guard. So I think that it's a really high upside spot for Rose. The only concern is just how tough this matchup is, and the fact that like on DraftKings, Rose is 4,900. That's not expensive for this spot. He still projects as one of the top value plays, but it's kind of not that difficult to underperform at 4,900. Whereas it's kind of tough to really kill someone at 3,400 like Jones is.
Yeah.
So if I had to choose like one of these popular guards to fade, Rose would be the one, simply because of the price tag and the difficult matchup and the fact that there's a ton of guys around him. Like looking at DraftKings, you have Lonzo, Dinwiddie, Collison, Payne, all priced within like $300 of Derrick Rose. So if I have to take a stand against one, it would be him. But I still think it's just such a high upside spot that I'm not going to like totally fade Rose. It's hard to imagine minutes not being there. Usage will be there. Everything you could possibly ask for. So the only concern is just that it is a tough matchup.
It is. There is another concern though.
What's that?
With guys like Derrick Rose, if he's coming off the bench, those are the guys that suffer most in a blowout. And I'm not saying this will get blown out, and I'm not saying that'll be the case. But let's just say that this game does blow out.
Like, let's just go ahead and say it's a possibility, because I think we both agree it very much is, right?
Yeah.
If this game blows out, Derrick Rose gets the worst of both worlds. Yeah, because he's going to come in, however many minutes into the second or into the first quarter, and then he'll get his first half run. But then in the second quarter, he's not starting, so you're losing those starting minutes. You're coming in, say, 6 or so minutes into the third, and with his old raggedy knees, there's no reason that Thibodeau is going to run him in the fourth. So he literally loses 1.5 rotations and not just one.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's another good point. Not that you're saying the game's going to blow out or not to play Rose,
but if it does,
this is pretty clearly the riskiest spot, I think, out of when you factor in price, out of Rose, Tyus Jones, and Okobo, or however the hell you pronounce it.
Okobo is Phoenix. Okoji is
No, I know.
Minnesota.
I was talking
Oh,
about
I'm
the three.
sorry. Okay, I thought we're talking Minnesota. I got you're talking about just point guards. My fault.
Yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead.
talking about the three chalk cheap point guards.
Yep.
Rose becomes the riskiest.
For sure. And Tyus Jones, even if this game blows out, it's hard to see him not playing 30 plus.
Yeah, for sure.
I also think just in terms of like who's a better player, Tyus Jones could play 35 minutes and in this matchup, Jones could play 35 minutes and legitimately give you 14 fantasy points. Like, it's
absolutely.
very doable.
Yeah.
So that is a big concern of mine. I prefer Okobo over Tyus Jones, and we'll talk about why in just a bit. Where are you at on Okoji?
I haven't playing a ton of minutes. I don't necessarily know how productive those minutes will be, but he should have, plenty of opportunities to score. And I just can't really see a way that he doesn't play a bunch of minutes here. I mean, you have guys, at the end of the Minnesota bench that potentially could take some of those minutes, but I don't really see why they wouldn't just run Okoji into the ground. So at that price tag, I think that he's perfectly fine. I prefer Rose, but no problem going to him, especially if he's going to be lower owned.
Yeah. Isaac O is pretty upset that we're talking about a Rose fade. We're just giving you the scenarios, and there are two definitive scenarios where he could end up not. At
the moment, I have like in my 150 max, I have Rose capped somewhere between like 20 and 30%, probably going to be around 20 just because of the guys around him. Oh. But if you were playing like, I don't know, like the $150 3 max or something like that, where you get ownership super concentrated on the same guys, I think it ends up being a pretty easy spot to just play someone in that price range other than Derrick Rose.
The thing that sucks is that I actually really like Derrick Rose in this spot. Not in the matchup, just the fact that the opportunity. I just wish we had him starting, because then I'd know that he's getting at least 26, 28 minutes. Because there's a real possibility if it gets out of hand that he plays 21 or 22. And I don't like that. But if it's a close game, then it's different. All right, I've got to ask you, Karl Anthony Towns going up against the Stifle Tower, arguably the league's best defensive big man. I know Karl Anthony Towns is a gritty, grinded out, I take what I want center, but he's not. What are you doing here with Butler and Teague matters less, but with Butler off the court?
Yeah, I mean, I like Towns here. I'm not too concerned about the matchup because he's not really reliant on scoring at the rim. He can pull Gobert away from the basket where he's less effective. And he's had plenty of success in this spot before. So I do, like it. Like, he has a 27.5% usage rate without Teague and Butler on the floor. So I like it a lot. I just want an idea on ownership on him, because with how deep center is, if like Towns is projecting as one of the best plays on the slate to me, but with how deep center is, if you're going to get Towns being, 20 or 25% owned, I would much rather just go underweight on him and take my chances with all the other guys that we've talked about. If people are going to say, oh, Gobert is scary, like blowout, blah, 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 and Towns going to be like 5%, then I would love to be, 3 or 4 times the field.
All right, before we move on to the next one, let me get your take on a comment from the comments, or from the, what is it called? The chat. The chat. That's a tough one. comes along with the costume. Tampa Yardy says, Tampa Yardy Yard, price plus opportunity. You cannot fade Rose in any scenario.
Yeah, so if Rose is going to be, let's say, 30% owned, and Lonzo and Payne and Collison are all going to be, let's say, 5% owned, you think Derrick Rose wins that over that group enough to be worth it? I don't.
All right. All right, Utah side. Rudy Gobert, 7,900 on DraftKings. You come over to FanDuel. Gobert's weighing in at 9,100. He's one of 4 above 9K. Definitely cheaper on DraftKings, but most of them are. And then you've got guys like Ricky Rubio, who I think has had 1 decent game this season, two decent, 1 really good game. And then Donovan Mitchell, it intrigues me a bit here. I think when Donovan Mitchell has those blow-up games, it's hard not to like him. But I want to just put a scenario together here, just a 1v1. It's been difficult for me to play Mitchell this year because Zach LaVine's just been sitting there at a cheaper price point all year long, basically doing more. I think they're very similar players, but I'm getting LaVine cheaper, with 35% usage almost every night.
Yeah, that's been my issue as well. Mitchell is scoring dependent for one. Like you have Rubio and Ingles picking up so many assists in that offense that Mitchell's not really doing anything other than scoring. So that's one knock against him. And then you get to Zach LaVine, like you said, who Mitchell gets plenty of usage. He's going to be around 30% most nights. LaVine is just so much higher than that, even that if you're talking about scoring dependent players, the edge goes to LaVine. Then you have guys like Drew Holiday in the price range that are going to get assists as well. It's become really, really difficult with how guys are currently priced for me to prioritize Mitchell, even though I like him as a player.
For sure. Gobert is his. I know the matchup doesn't concern you with Cat. It does personally concern me. Cat just concerns me. I think I'm gonna look out.
Yeah.
Right. What are your thoughts on Gobert?
I like him. It's tough to prioritize him because of how deep the position is, but I like the fact that he's going against what's going to be a really high usage guy in Towns. Even if you go back and look at their previous games, in the last 7 games, Gobert's had at least 2 blocks in all of them against Towns. He's had 4 blocks in 3 out of the last 7. So there's a ton of upside there for defensive stats. On top of the fact that I don't expect Towns to do a whole lot to stop Gobert at the rim on whatever lobs or putbacks Gobert gets. So I do like Gobert. It's just tough to. I don't plan on having more Gobert than like either of the DeAndres.
I hear you, Brandon. Nice work, Brandon Sabala. Do you want to move on from this one? I think we can. I think we covered Minnesota pretty comprehensively. If there's anything else in Utah you want to get to, I'm good with that.
I do I like Rubio at his price tag at 5,600.
So do I.
Teague being out and Jones presumably starting is a downgrade for him, but I just still think the price tag's too cheap for what he brings. And it's another guy like in that same price range as Derrick Rose that you can pivot to. He's $700 more on DraftKings. And it just goes back to the point where I like Derrick Rose, but if he's just going to be massively higher owned than everyone else in this price range, I don't think that's how it should be.
Yeah, agreed. The funny thing about Rubio, remember last year he just started shooting like 45% from the field?
Yeah.
Well, it's back down to 30%. So there's that. Let's move on, though. We still have a few games to get to. Indiana and New York Knicks. Looking at the odds on this one, you've got the Knicks 6-point dogs in New York. Pacers have looked pretty decent this year. 207 total. Feels like we're going back to 1980, huh? I don't like playing Oladipo when he's above 8K or where he's at this price, but I just have this feeling that he keeps sitting around that 45 fantasy point range, giving you 20, 25 points a game, 6, 7, 8 assists, 6, 7 rebounds, a few steals. The monster game is coming. And I don't believe I've heard his name once today. DeRozan's coming off 360 fantasy point games in his last 4. I think the one thing to me is like, if you are looking to play DeRozan because of what he's done, I would just say this. On average, and they both had the same usage rate this year, DeRozan's assist rate's through the roof, but on average, I expect to see them producing very, very similarly. And this is a pretty damn good spot for Oladipo. Now, how easy will it be to get to him at 8,600? Not that easy. But the game is coming. Oladipo is monster upside in the stocks category, stocks plus steals plus blocks. I'm just very tempted to like go suboptimal and get some of him into my lineup tonight.
It's just so, yeah, I mean, it's really hard to get to him, like you said, but also I expect Ntilikina to defend him most likely, and that's not really a spot that I want to be paying up for either. He's just so long and such a good defender that
That's all he's good at.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not really interested in Oladipo. I like Collison more. We're finally seeing him so early in the season. he wasn't playing big minutes, but if you looked at first half rotations and like projected it out, he would have been projecting easily for over 30 minutes. It's just that Indiana was involved in like a million blowouts to start the season. And now in the last couple of games, we've seen big minutes from Collison. I don't necessarily expect 36, but even if we get, around 32 minutes from him at 4,700 on DraftKings, I think that's a good spot against, in a favorable matchup against the Knicks. So I like him. And then I actually like Ntilikina as well. We've seen his usage go up with this starting unit. He's gotten 11 and 13 field goal attempts in the last two games since they changed the lineup. He's not playing with Cantor anymore. He's going to be defending a ball dominant guy in Oladipo. I think that he's another, value guy that's going to go overlooked, but is actually in a pretty good spot.
You said Ntilikina?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. I can get my 18 fantasy points elsewhere.
I haven't projected for 24 for whatever it's worth.
All right. I mean, I think that's reasonable. It's reasonable.
There's just no shooters on the floor anymore. They're looking to him to score more. He had in the 2 games with the starting unit, he has the 24% and 19% usage rate, 6 for 11 shooting and 5 of 13 shooting. He's got the opportunity for more assists. He's gonna be in a good opportunity for defensive stats here, and no one's gonna roster him because of the other 3-point guards plus, Okogie
Sure.
and whoever else.
I'll give you this. If he averages, 12 field goal attempts going forward, I'm in. But I'm not even trying to be funny here. Like him shooting 5 of 13 and 6 of 11 is above his standard. So
yeah, I'm not going to argue that, but he's just still so cheap, and he's playing big minutes.
Yeah,
I don't
he's cheap. No, I hear you. He's cheap.
You know?
He's definitely cheap. Anything else on the Indiana side? I think we covered that. New York, God, Enes Kanter went from being a hero to really having no idea what you're getting from him. And the guy is still going to give you production across his 25 minutes or whatever he's getting. But it doesn't seem like there's any faith in him to play full starter minutes anymore. And his price is he's still priced too high. Noah Vonleh has been decent. Definitely not an upside player whatsoever. And with all of the value that has popped up on this slate, I don't really have a problem getting away from that. But he has started at power forward in consecutive games. And then Tim Hardaway, Adam, is shooting 20+ times a game. So there's that.
Yeah, I think Hardaway, he's always such a high ceiling play that I like getting him in into tournament lineups, even though he's never really optimal because his floor is not that high. But outside of that, it's kind of just a guessing game with the Knicks. Like Noah Vonleh certainly has a ceiling, but I'm not convinced that he's going to be all that consistent. Currently, we have him projected to be really popular too, which would make me not interested. If it turns out that he's going to be low owned, then I'll get there. His Zonia at 3,700 actually is really interesting to me. He's probably going to play 22 to 24 minutes. The guy's got like a 26 or 27% usage rate, and he's 3,700 going against the Pacers, second unit. So that's a guy that in tournaments, having 5 to 10% of, I think probably puts you in a pretty good spot.
Sounds good. Let's move on. Dallas, Lakers. This could be the LeBron game. Yeah, I'm not a narrative streak guy. You know that. Most know that. You're not a big narrative guy. I don't really we like to go by the statistics. But I think the narrative when it comes to LeBron James sometimes is just simply when LeBron James feels like taking over, he's going to do it. There's a 2-5 basketball team. Sorry to hurt your soul, Ring Rim. But they have really struggled. Now, there are two ways this plays out. 3, actually. One, and by the way, there's a 235.5 point total. Lakers are 7.5 point favorites. One, they get their shit together because with the amount of talent on the team, they should at least be better than 2-5. They should at least, and all of these games they're losing, by the way, are very competitive. At least recently. Either LeBron James goes off, puts the team on his back, and smashes Dallas into oblivion, and only plays 3 quarters, but still has a solid game, but more so in the 60 fantasy point range. Or this team actually is lacking the chemistry as bad as it seemed, and Dallas keeps it competitive, and then LeBron just completely takes over in the fourth quarter. That would be the preferred route, because the worse the Lakers are as a team, the more LeBron has to do. And the third scenario, I forget, but those are the two important ones.
Yeah, I mean, I like LeBron here. I think it comes down to sight a lot for me on DraftKings, where he's small forward, power forward, and he's $100 less than Anthony Davis. I don't think I'll have. I'm sure I'll have him, but I won't be prioritizing him just because I like Anthony Davis more. But on FanDuel, where they're different positions and where Anthony Davis is, I think, like 12,800, then it becomes a lot easier to get to LeBron and a lot more optimal, I think, to get to LeBron. So it really comes down to what site you're playing on. I think. No issue with LeBron other than where he's the same price as Anthony Davis.
Yeah. Antoine Murphy says LBJ is going to let the other guys figure it out. He wants a lesser workload. The team as a whole balls tonight. I think I agree with you rest of season, but I also think that this is LeBron James just shitting on the other team, and I expect it to happen. Now, that, Adam, does not mean that I don't love DeAndre Jordan. I wrote the deep dive today, and I was like actually looking forward to getting to Jordan because of some of the numbers. He is a 50% rebound share when he's on the court. Like he is collecting 50% of the rebounds when on the court. It's insane. He's doubled in 6 of 7 games. The only game he didn't double, he was one basket away from it. He has 15 or more rebounds in 5 straight starts. And this is where it really gets interesting. So he leads the team in rebounding chances, which is also an important number, like potential assists that we use, with 23.1 per game. Doncic is second with 11, and Maxi Kleber is third with 7.9. So they're so far off. And he's playing 35 minutes per game. So, yeah, it's kind of hard not to like him.
Yeah, and Dallas has been running. Yeah, you mentioned the minutes. Like Dallas has been running a really tight rotation as well. 2 games ago, like all their starters played 36, except Dennis Smith Jr. played 34. Last game, all the starters played 34, 35. Smith played 32. So the minutes are there. It's a great spot against the Lakers. A ton of missed shots, a ton of pace. I can't find anything not to like about this spot for DeAndre.
And me neither. And then just to make it more enticing is the idea that this season, as much as I've loved JaVale McGee, the Lakers opposing centers are just rebounding the 4th most rebounds and points against the Lakers, 2nd most blocks to centers, and the Lakers are allowing the 2nd highest efficiency to opposing centers. It's just the only worry here is that, again, LeBron shoulders a heavier load, gets this team in order, and they blow Dallas out. And I do think it's a possibility, but it's not one where I'm going to not play someone that is in a really, really good spot because of that. Do you have it there? I like this game quite a bit, but I've talked a lot about LeBron and a lot about Jordan. So let's hear what else you've got here, whether it be Doncic, Dennis Smith, McGee, anybody else that you have a lot of love for in this one?
Dallas is my favorite team on the slate on DraftKings, at least with their pricing, because I already mentioned how tight the rotation's been. But Dennis Smith Jr. is 5,900. Doncic is only 7,300. Wes Matthews is going to play 35, 36 minutes at 5K, and Harrison Barnes is going to play about the same at 5,500 in a huge pace-up spot. Against a team that I expect that these guys should be able to pile up stats against. So I really love the Mavericks here. 1 through 5 starters. I have it capped at 3 Mavs per team, but I expect they'll have a lot of lineups with 2 and 3 Mavs in it. You mentioned McGee. I like him. Like his price tag came down to 5,700. He's still playing around 30 minutes. I still like him here. It's another true big in DeAndre Jordan, so it makes sense for McGee to be on the floor as much as he can. So I like him a lot. Outside of that, it's just secondary guys from the Lakers. But except Lonzo, I do think is a really good tournament play on DraftKings. I don't have any confidence in his minutes in terms of a floor. But 5K for what he can do if he does get around 30 minutes of run here, I think is too cheap at pretty low ownership.
Yeah, it's just a really decent game. I'll be honest with you though, like Kuzma and Ingram, it's hard for me to really love them, but like Lonzo Ball is too cheap. JaVale McGee, I still think is a little bit too cheap, but it'll be hard for me to get there just because of the amount of centers that I like. But Jordan, LeBron, Lonzo. I think Dennis Smith is perfectly fine. You know, his all the underlying, I don't even like using the term underlying numbers for basketball, but I think you know where I'm going with this. Like all of the whether it be usage and minutes and potential peripheral stuff, like everything is there for him to have a decent game and a good game. So I like that. I just hate that now DraftKings moved Doncic back to a point guard only. It's insane.
Yeah, it's really annoying.
It really, really is. But we'll move on unless there's anyone else here. I think we've covered it. If you have any questions, obviously hit us up on Twitter. Our handles are under our heads. And also, of course, you can find us in Slack. If you're not in Slack yet, you definitely want to get in there. And por favor, hit us with a like. Much appreciated. We got 69 likes right now. Let's try and get that up a little bit. We got almost 1,000 people watching. Do us that solid, boys and girls. Hit that like button. Let's keep moving on. And have a good Halloween as well. If you got kids, or maybe you are a kid, which would be strange because you got to be 18, right? Don't you got to be? You got to be 18. Yeah. We don't have that shit here on the Deeper Dive. All right. New Orleans, Golden State. Adam, the Pelicans say, yeah. Last night they're like, yeah, we'll let you know. We'll rule on Anthony Davis's status after shoot around. After shoot around, Anthony Davis is a game time decision. So
he's expected to play as of.
I know. Kate, like an hour ago we got that. I'm like, of course this is what we have. Anyway, 238 total. It's up there. 9.5 points. This game opened around I think 12.5. And obviously 12.5 given to the Pelicans, but it's down to 9.5. Pelicans can play this team tight. Golden State generally that kind of toys around with teams and then blows their doors off in the second half. Start wherever you want here. There's a whole lot to talk about.
Love Anthony Davis, especially. I mean, I guess there is still some risk that he doesn't play, especially because he has a history of being Anthony Davis. But like on DraftKings, there's so much that you can swap to anyway, like stars to fill out your lineups. If he does, late scratch. I love Davis here just because behind Giannis, I expect him to be the second best fantasy player this year because he just does so much for this team. They play at such a fast pace. It's a matchup that he should do perfectly fine in. So yeah, I mean, I love Davis, and then you have Elfrid Payton out, so you should still, even with Davis back, you should still have plenty of ball handling responsibilities for Jrue Holiday. You should see his assists, basically through the roof, and Davis being back won't even hurt that. So I like Holiday a lot. 7,200 on DraftKings is way, way too cheap, I think. Then you get into secondary guys with Etuan Moore for cheap. Nikola Mirotic is fine, but I don't like him quite as much at the elevated price tag with Davis back. Same goes for Julius Randle. He has upside, but it's just tough to project him for a lot of minutes now that Davis is back as well. So Davis and Holiday from the Pelican side are the two guys that I like the most.
All right. Yeah, I read a really awesome article, by the way, on Giannis. I won't take up much time. That basically just said he's the only player on the Bucks that doesn't fit what the Bucks do, yet the entire team revolves around him. Pretty amazing. Like Henson, even Henson's jacking up a bunch of threes. Everyone shoots threes. Giannis is the only one that does. He's that good though, and you can revolve the team around him for that reason. Did you talk about Dre at all?
No, I only talked about the Pels.
I think Draymond Green is in a pretty fascinating spot here. He's averaging less field goal attempts per game, less points, but there was really no turnover last year when it came to this Warriors team. Like it's pretty much the same team. If anyone, they lost a couple shooters off the bench, like Young and such. So I expect him just to put up very similar numbers and the 3-point games, the 5-point games, the 2-point games. You'll see that once in a while, but I really expect to see him start giving you more 10, 12-point games like we saw last season. And then that's when you're going to start getting the 40, 50 fantasy point games. This to me is a spot where if Draymond Green is going to play a lot, if Anthony Davis gets full run, I expect Draymond Green also to see a ton of minutes, which he probably would anyway. And he's 6,700 on DraftKings. I mean, you're getting Dre at a discount. 76 on FanDuel isn't bad. Power forward's not that deep, and I just can't pay that much for Davis on this slate, not on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on Green. I'm still not getting much of him just because I like a lot of other guys better, and I like guys like Curry and Durant are both less than $10,000 as well.
I know Curry's in such dude. It's so hard not to. You're right. Curry is just such a phenomenal.
So it's still been kind of tough for me to get to Draymond, but that's not to take away from your point that he is too cheap. If you need an expensive forward, perfectly fine. Durant and Curry, though, I've actually started projecting both of them for a little bit more usage, just because I found that when I use their season-long usage rates, I don't really get as much as I should, because when Curry's shooting well, he just shoots all the shots, and when Durant's shooting well, he just shoots all the shots, and the same kind of goes for Clay as well. So I think for tournaments, it's probably a good idea to make sure that you're kind of projecting them to have games where they take over the offense, and then just kind of cap how much of them you actually get. But I love the spot for everyone on Golden State.
I gotta tell you, man, I see these trick-or-treaters outside with their parents walking around. Like, I understand wanting to protect your kid, right? But it's still light out,
How old are the kids?
I don't know, like 13.
Okay,
I'm kidding. I don't know. I'm saying, go with your parent. Yeah, your parents could come with you, of course. But can you really get the Halloween experience trick-or-treating while the sun is still out?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I thought you were complaining because parents were walking their 5-year-old kids around.
No, not at all. I mean, I think it would be silly if you're like, all right, Johnny, like 3.5 years old, throw some paint on his face and send him out on his. No, not at all. Right? No. I was saying it's still light outside.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you there.
That's a little much, man. I'm not a parent yet, but I'm going to do it right when I am. Stephen Curry, though, Adam, is the first guy that got into the deep dive today. We go by positions, obviously. He's just been so ridiculously dominant, and it's not even just that. He's below 10K on both sites. Below 10K on FanDuel is outrageous. Yes, the other game, he plays 25 minutes. Clay does everything, and he still gives you like 50 fantasy points. This has been his highest upside season to start in a while. Usage, 31%. His assist rate actually is due for positive regression. It's only at 25%. Unless he's going to score more, I'm fine with that. But he's averaging a career high in field goal attempts, 3-point attempts, and true shooting. I just this is one of those games where Curry I really like, and oftentimes I don't like paying for Curry because, as you talk about so often, Davis and Giannis and ceilings are generally higher.
Yeah, exactly. On my initial crunch, I ended up with Curry at like 15% on DraftKings, but that also was with a lot of guards capped at like 60% that I've since lowered. So I expect that I'll end up with a pretty healthy amount of Steph Curry, just because there's no question the ceiling for a less than 10K price tag is really appealing.
All right, anything else?
I already said I really like Durant too, so no.
Anything we hadn't missed. All right. Last one here. We're going to turn it over to Chris and Eddie for Live Before Lock. Keep in mind, by the way, that Lock starts at 7:30 tonight.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we
totally forgot about that.
Yeah, we probably could have come on a little bit later. And I'm looking at the schedule now, Josh. It even has – actually, no, it has a deeper dive starting at 5, and then Eddie and Chris coming on a little bit later. So, I don't know. We'll let you know. Josh will let you know because he's that dude. But
I didn't know until 5 seconds ago when you said it.
I know, right? Anyway, I hear Kobo. I hear a lot about like he's a trap, he's this and that. And you know what, Adam, it's very possible. Like, yeah, it's possible. Sure, the dude is a rookie point guard. He's French. I'm just kidding. That has nothing to do with it.
I was going to say, you're taking my my arguments from this morning.
I know. No, but there were a few things. I was just seeing if you were paying attention. He played 19 minutes in the second half of that comeback attempt against OKC. And Russell Westbrook actually returned for a stint in the fourth quarter because they were up by like 25 in the third, and it got narrowed down. But here's what stood out to me. So he played 31 minutes in that game, came in. Isaiah Cannon played like 6.5 minutes, right? So an average rotation, if you actually put him in Cannon's place, like 37, but you can't really prorate it like that. So let's just say 30 minutes. A guy like Westbrook, in terms of like how many touches per game he sees, which it's a number I like, because the more you're involved, the more I'm willing to target you and pay for you. Right now, Blake Griffin leads the league with 90 touches per game. Okubo played 31 minutes and had 90 touches in that game. 90 touches, 72 passes made, 81 received. These are all numbers that you look at. It's like league leading numbers. People are going to blow this out of proportion. I'm not expecting a monster game from him. What I'm saying is, when he was out there, he was very, very involved in the offense. I know Josh Jackson fouled out. I know there are scenarios, but the really only thing I care about is Devin Booker and Isaiah Cannon. So I get 31 minutes from this guy, and I know that when he's out there, he's at least going to initiate the offense, going to bring the ball up the court, going to have a lot of ball handling duties. That's all I care about. And if that is the case against the Spurs team that people still think is good defensively, but lost Green, lost Leonard, lost Dejounte Murray, and is ranks third worst in pick and roll points allowed to ball handlers, then I have a lot of interest in this guy, because any point guard that's that cheap, that's that involved, is going to be on my radar, and that's as simple as it comes.
Yeah, I agree completely. Josh Jackson being out was the counterpoint that I was going to make, but at 3,700, it's not like you need this guy to be a monster to be useful. San Antonio has been terrible defensively this year. They've been really bad in transition. Phoenix in general, like, models I look at are lower on them than I am personally, just because I think they actually they match up pretty well in this spot against San Antonio. I like him. I will probably have a lot of him, I would expect. I have him projected for 23 or 24 DraftKings points at 3,700. I don't have any problem with him. I do like the spot much more than I like it against Utah.
Yeah, me too. And it's not a bad matchup. So that's all I can say. I can give you the numbers, and if the numbers line up, then I'm going to take a look. And it would have been tougher for me if it was like a total blowout. But the interesting thing is, they brought them back from what was a total wash into a game that was decided by like 7 points. And we'll see what happens. But he's 3,700 and he's a point guard. So that'll do it for me. Anyway, we will talk about San Antonio, but we both love this guy. I want your take on DeAndre Ayton. Give me the good stuff, man.
Yeah, I love DeAndre Ayton here. Without Booker on the floor this year, you've got about a 23% usage rate. You see his assist percentage increase. He has been running pretty good in assists, I think. My expected assist percentage is lower than his actual.
What's his potential?
I don't have the potential numbers in front of me. I have his expected assists for the season is like 14.5%.
Okay.
And that I have him projected for about 16.5% for this game, since he does see a boost without Booker and Cannon. So, but
his potential assist, by the way, just in case you were wondering, on the season is 5.2. So,
So the point though is just he's a high usage guy who also rebounds and picks up assists, and he's $7,100 going against LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol. So I like him. And then Josh Jackson, I think, deserves a mention too. Obviously the guy has absolutely sucked in the last couple of games, and there's no argument that he's really good at basketball. Like, he's not, but he does get a huge bump in usage without Booker on the floor. You can, knock that down a little bit if you want because of Ayton, but still, even this season without Booker on the floor, about a 30% usage rate for Jackson. Other than TJ Warren last season, he had the highest frequency of transition possessions on the team. Still not particularly efficient, but when he does do well, it's normally in transition. The Spurs have been a terrible team in transition, in addition to just being a terrible defense.
Yep.
People on DraftKings are finally not going to go to Josh Jackson. On FanDuel, we talked about it. He's 3,700. You can drop him if he sucks, and if he hits the ceiling, you don't drop him. Like, just put him in your lineups. But even on DraftKings at 4,700 at small forward, I would like to be overweight on Josh Jackson.
All right, fair enough to me. Another thing, by the way, about Ayton that stands out and is really, really important in my book, he has closed out the game or played deep into the fourth quarter in all but one blowout this season that they've been blown out.
Yeah, that's definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a guy that even in bad situations is coming back in the fourth quarter and playing like 7 to 8 minutes. I'm fine with that. You want to develop the rookies, get it done, man, because he's doing everything else well. Outside of blocks and steals, and I think you'll probably get some more of that. San Antonio, I'll let you run with this because we got to head out soon, even though it's a 7:30 lock. Maybe we'll give Eddie some more time because we've cut into it before. DeRozan's expensive. He's also been destructive, just incredibly good. And he has, Adam, I couldn't believe this. He has a 36.5% assist rate, 12.5 potential assists per game. And I mean, and he leads the league in drives, which is just no surprise. So he's just crushing, man.
Yeah, he's been doing great. I also have him as one of the guys that's outperforming his expected assists more than anyone in the league. I have him at about a 27% expected assist percentage. So I still think he will be really productive in that regard, just not as much as he has. But the thing for me, it's just really tough to get there because he's so much more expensive than these other shooting guards. And it's just hard for me to justify paying an extra like $2,000 for him. I know he clearly has a really high ceiling. He's been playing monster minutes. I can't project the guy for like 42 minutes either, though. And even if I project him for 38 or 39, he just doesn't come in as, one of my favorite shooting guard plays. So if you want to force him in your lineups, then, clearly the ceiling's there, but I just am having trouble getting to him. Kind of the same for Aldridge. I think that it's a fine spot for Aldridge. It's just kind of tough for me to pay $8,500 for him when, you have so many like centers on the slate that are a lot cheaper on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think probably a little bit easier to get to him at power forward, but with all the flexibility on DraftKings, it's just tough for me to get to Aldridge.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say this too. One more thing about Aldridge. The Spurs are not a great team, but you still have Aldridge. You still have DeRozan. Even Rudy Gay has looked good. You still have a few role guys that are, veterans that can put up points. Someone was yelling in chat about Bellinelli. Hey, man, you do your thing with Belly. When he gets hot, he gets hot. But you're not going to don't expect Belly to be dishing dimes out or anything. You're going to need 20, 15, 20 real points. Anyway, about DeRozan. You look at those 3 monster games, and they all came in really, really competitive games. All of them were separated by 5 or less points. And I worry that won't be the case tonight. As much as I love DeAndre Ayton, and as much as I think Okobo can put up solid numbers at minimum salary almost, this could still be a game where Greg Popovich alone is the reason that it's over by, halftime.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible.
Yeah, and I just think DeRozan's going to need all those minutes to get up there at that price point. Plus, I just like Stephen Curry more at $300 more on DraftKings, where he also has shooting guard eligibility.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, that'll do it for today. Happy Halloween. Thanks as always for tuning in. Go out, get them kids trick-or-treating. How about this? Treat for us, that like button. You hit it already. Appreciate it. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Stick around for Chris and Eddie, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive. We got a full week of like 5 to 8 games. We're loaded. Have a great night. Good luck. We'll see you back here tomorrow.